Hey everyone, you're watching week 4 of Challengers North America featuring our next generation of talent trying to make it to Ascension. And I'm Lemmy Kiwi. I'm in the hosting chair this time and I get to be on the other side of Vance Silly and Ash this time. How's it going, Ash? Because we got to keep Vance in check today.
Just wondering
Oh,
what
we
was the
do.
other side of me was. I had to look
Oh my
behind.
god. See, we
Behind
already
you.
have to start keeping him in check. You just interrupted me. That's actually so
Yeah.
crazy. We just started the day, but I'm
It's gonna
good.
be a,
I'm
it's gonna be a long one for you guys.
Again. Vance,
Oh my God.
you're going to
It
detention.
is gonna be a long one. That's my dad for you, you know?
Yep.
Well, Vance, thanks for showing up. I'm not behind you, but I am in front of you. Pay attention. We're sharing the talking stick today. It's your turn.
Oh, it's my turn. I'm
Yeah.
actually quite happy to be here today. I think actually since the first time that I met Ash in like 2021 when she first started Valorant, this is the first time we get to work together on the same desk.
There's
Right?
no way. Really?
I think it is. I think it is. 'Cause
Actually,
if you're doing this, I'm casting.
Oh my
so
god.
it's
The
pretty cool.
dementia has settled in because he has forgotten like the multiple times that we've worked together. Totally fine. It's cool.
I'm talking about a
it's
Game
okay.
Changers cast for
I'm not-
VCTs.
I know. You know what? True.
Yeah. And
It's
VCL.
okay. I know I'm not your favorite child, but we're gonna move past this. We're gonna move past this.
Well, beyond the undiscovered children that Vance Silly have, we'll be hitting playoffs for our first time this year, and that's
Oh,
on the
man.
horizon. And remember, everybody, knocking down 4 opponents will cash in their ticket to the finish line. And today's match features YFP and Blue Otter. And Ash, for Blue Otter, looking at this roster, this is going to be a real testament to whether they belong at the top or the bottom of the standings.
Yeah, I really agree with you on that because these two are obviously tied 2-1 right now. Blue Otter kind of in the lead when as far as those standings go due to that round differential. But when you have that all in mind, you have to consider the opponents that they've gone up against previously, right? They played up against Burger Boys, Hakiki MORI, which is a very different look from the opponents that we've had to see YFP go up against. So I really think that this is going to be a really big litmus test, like you were saying, as to if they are able to maintain this kind of standing within the league.
Yeah, and if anything, if you're looking at this graphic right now, the first thing that comes to mind is we already have a first team going into the playoffs, and that's the Rankers that's been unstoppable since they started in Challengers in split number 3 of last year. They've gone 17-0 since then, and almost seems like they don't really want to drop any type of series, any type of maps, and come in with full confidence into every one of these games. But on the bottom side of that screen, that's where unfortunately we're gonna witness that today. One of the teams between SRG and MORI are gonna go home, which is sad.
That is so sad, and we're gonna leave that funeral for the end of our show because less stakes for this one because Blue Otter and YFP are at 2-1, but they need 4 wins. Remember that we can all count to 4 here. We play video games, and so let's go over that Blue Otter roster because it's very exciting, and we're blessed to have a Game Changers goat, a Bob over there. But Vance Silly, tell me all about Blue Otter. Do they have a chance to really threaten YFP this time?
I definitely do think so, because if you're looking at this roster of Zeldris rejoining basically since last week, I think our inside reporter is one of the casters today, Keg, was like, oh, wait, I actually had a conversation with Bob. Zeldris is actually coming in for the second week, and that's where they actually change a little bit of roles around, where Zeldris is going to be coming in as this duelist, and we all know him from the OR Esports of last season, and he actually put some pretty decent numbers up on a duelist role, and also wielding different duelist agents, and not only being a one-trick pony around the jet. So Bob most likely will be going back into the bread and butter of what we know her for when she first started playing in Valorant, is going to play the initiator role. Mostly on the Tejo for most of the maps, but overall, I think with this Zeldris joining back into the roster for this week, it actually adds a lot of firepower to the team, and I don't think it's going to be adding too many changes in terms of how they approach the maps, and could be a good contender against YFP today.
And then, girl, we know that Bob is warmed up after the performance that she put up this past weekend, Ash, over in Game Changers. Though, not an initiator in Game Changers, but more of a duelist. But that was still a huge performance out of Bob this past weekend.
Yeah, it definitely was. You know, it's pretty cool to see like that flexibility that Vance is talking about that she does bring to the table, the firepower in every single role. The fact that she's even able to pump out those kinds of numbers that she does on the duelist,
Yeah.
like we saw her this past weekend, like we saw in the last few weeks of Challengers NA before Zeldris slotted in place of Welly. And she's able to continue to do that on those support roles, which is massive. I think when you look at these numbers to consider that she's going to be, you know, the second, third person in when they are looking for those site takes in support of Zeldris and able to consistently get off those trades. It's really nice to see how well she rounds out the team.
And the other thing to add around the stats that we don't see currently is just the agent that she wields, right? Being on that Tejo, being able to
Mhm.
stall a lot into the post plans is what she was really good at when she was playing as Silva as well, under like the Cloud9 roster, Cloud9 White even in the past. So seeing that Silva come back in, being that clutch role, and you're able to do that as a Tejo, it adds a lot into the depth of this roster overall here for Blue Otter as well.
And Bob, she fragged out of her mind though. And now she gets to play with Zoe. I mean, of course, on Blue Water, and they have such a good duo ship together, Ash. The chemistry is there. And I think going up against YFP, who's, I would say, at the upper echelon, this could be Blue Water's chance to kind of turn around their narrative and to be regarded as a top team.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it also opens up some opportunities as well if they do want to ever make any compositional changes, lean
True.
into that double duelist meta there is where you can slot Bob into that role as well. So
Mhm.
it gives a lot of flexibility in that regard where maybe down the line we'll be able to see them catch some teams off guard with some different comps and have those doors open up for them as well.
And we're blessed to have like our game changers goat here, but also a VCT champion in Zeke, like a seasoned player like that. What is he doing here? That kind of track record, I'm sure, provides so much to this team, Vans.
Yeah, if anything, though, it's coming into this one for this roster. It's a little bit of a different Zeke, though, that we talk about here at this point. But
Ah,
still, going into what he brings to the table as well is a change into seems like going to be just a breach player overall for most of the maps here. Because if you're looking back at the history of Zeke, just in general, under Blue Otter for this season, he switched between both the breach and the Astra. But now with Zeldris coming in, and then you also have Bob playing under the Tejo, he's been playing a lot of breach and maybe not putting enough numbers in the fragging department because he's also dropping like 15 to like 25 assists into the other games that he's playing in the other weeks. So when you're talking about how Bob is really good at delaying towards the end or being that third entry after she uses util, the one that it initiates and engages the most to get the most value for Zeldris on the entry is definitely going to be Zeke at this point. So this is going to be a very fun one to observe and see if he's going to stay as the breach going back into these games.
mhm. Well, at least he can cosplay as a champion. That makes way more sense now because the photos,
Can't
the
make me laugh. I'm dying
mugshots
here.
are not matching up. And now I'm going to make you choke to death so that you
Yep.
can't correct me on things anymore. But like Zeke provides so much to this team. But we now have to regard their opponents, YFP. These are the big hitters. Need a lot of heavy lifting, like at least 50 push-ups to have a good fight against YFP. And looking at their roster, YFP have only lost to the top teams. So can they continue to deliver positive results that their fans expect?
Yeah, I think that we've seen how YFP has kind of just like warmed up into this season here as well. Yeah, they had a bit of a tough match up against M80, who had a very hot start, I think, to stage one. But then you look at their game up against Shopify Rebellion Black, things really lighting up. This roster getting a little bit more comfortable with each other and whatnot. And you talked about some of the experience on the side of Blue Water. When you look at YFP, they have that in spades, and you have players like Jake, for example, previously on C9 last year, looking to
Yeah.
also show his stuff and prove why he was at that tier one level. And I think that's something that everyone has to keep in mind is that this is still an opportunity, not just for these teams to try and make Ascension eventually, but to continue to prove that they are worth their medal, that even though they have
Yep.
dropped back down towards tier two, they can play at that tier one level.
Exactly. For Jake, Penny, and Stellar, they want to be back on that VCT stage. Penny never really played in partnership, but he already played in Reykjavik pretty much at this point as well, right? And back in 2021. So he wants to have an opportunity to taste at least some sort of stage again and get redemption of that part. And it's actually quite surreal to me that, you know, you've had moments and even right now, these issues around VCT rosters trying to find like a fragging IGL, yet Stellar is still being overlooked. So I think
Mhm.
that's going to bring a lot of add a lot of chip on the shoulder here for Stellar that
Mhm.
wants to make sure here that if they make it back with Penny and everybody else, holy crap, is he going to come back with a vengeance?
And YFP have stayed together for ages, and I feel like you never see that in esports anymore. They're bros for life. And Penny especially is a player hoping to prove that they're a top duelist in challengers and to earn a permanent spot this time on a VCT roster, Ash.
Yeah, and you look at the numbers that he's able to pump out for this squad, and he's just been going absolutely insane. Of course, having so much support from his team as well. But a great tip of the spear to have here on the side of YFP to make those opening picks for the team. And we've also seen him even slotting on to a little bit of that chamber here and there, who has come back a bit into the meta, considering
Mhm.
how the Sentinels have been rounded out within the last few patches.
Exactly that. Seeing Chamber coming in on a couple of maps, I think it's fine that he brings it out. But if not, playing a lot of Yoru, where you would think in the past for Penny, it's 95% Jet, 5% Raze, depending on the maps. And of course, Yoru wasn't really out there back then. But it also changes the playstyle for somebody like Penny because he is going to be a little bit more proactive and rifling a little bit more for the team and doing a very good job at creating a different type of space here for the team instead of having to be forced on a Jet op every single time. And that's also thanks to the compositions here that YFP also brings out a lot of Breach and Teo that allows the Euro to get a lot of space, just like a G2 style that you currently see in partnership. So Penny is fitting quite well into this Euro role, and I didn't expect for him to be such a good Euro player already off the gates here in the VCL. So it proves to me here that his agent pool for duelists is also quite deep.
Sure, and he was one of my favorite Neon players during that Neon jail meta that we just had, and to blossom into top frag like he did last week on Yor was incredible. But YFP went to the finals last stage, didn't get that crown, so we know they can threaten the top, but a boon to this team has to be Physic on how he was able to guide them there throughout the years. And with that experience as a coach in the past, Ash, he can really help dissect their plans going forward.
I think that it's a nice shout for his previous experience as a coach there as well, because it's important to be able to, shot call for your team and whatnot. But I think that sometimes it's a little bit forgotten the importance of kind of being a rock for your team is
Mhm.
when you're in that server and your ability to kind of just uh, keep your team's mental pretty steady and that emotional leadership that comes into play that I think that that experience definitely helps bolster here for Physic.
Yeah, I think overall, when you're looking at his stats too, maybe it doesn't look like he has the best numbers overall going to the challengers for this season, but it's also because YFP in the first couple of weeks have been testing the waters with different types of compositions. For example, bringing it out this Harbor on Pearl and trying to get a good value out of Harbor and Sova at that point, and it got thrashed. And Physic wasn't really able to activate at that point because you're trying something new and you're asking a lot of your players to try to just come back in the game when you just couldn't in the first place. But when he actually went over to the Tejo into the later weeks and again going back into Stellar, going with the meta of the Tejo Breach and then with the Yoru, you're starting to see the Mr. Consistent Physic that's been competing in a tier 2 scene for quite a very long time. He has a
Mhm.
plethora of organizations that he played for and has always heard, we always rather heard about his name in terms of how good he is in rounds where he could do multi kills.
And YFP don't have a coach listed, so that must be a lot on Physic to, well, maintain the respect of also his fellow teammates, to be a pseudo coach, maybe in and out of game, and to help YFP maintain that consistent top performance. But how does this affect his numbers? Well, let's compare just initiators to initiators of Zeke versus Physic. And you could see that that takes a hit, but what would you rather have, like a really strong IGL who's brought you these top results, or someone that can frag out more and then you could share that leadership on the Blue Otter side? What do you think, Ash?
I think it's little bit of a hard balance there because they're two like slightly different roles that you're looking
Yeah,
at. Because when you're looking towards Zeke, he's playing that flash initiator for Physic, leaning more into that kind of recon S style,
drone.
and then
Yeah.
more of that clearing that you get with that Tejo. So I feel like it can be hard to kind of say you're going to look towards maybe a little bit more damage out of Physics sometimes because of the ability to clear out that space, but that's not really his main role in that regard. Meanwhile, Zeke is going to be a bit closer to follow up because he has to play super close with Zeldris with that utility to help him take that space and also get those refrags.
Correct. If you want to go apples to apples, you're probably going to have to look at Zeke and Stellar pretty much at this point, because Stellar has been the one that's been utilizing that breach a lot here for YFP. But if not, it comes down to the scan or what he could do as a tailway for Physic. And I think it's still going to be pretty good.
And well, we can only have fun if we know where we're going. So let's look at the maps. Remember, this is a best of 3, starting off with the Blue Otter pick on Lotus, Fracture for YFP, and we'll end things off on Split. Vans, do you think, based on the map pool, anyone have an advantage or an edge going into this?
Yeah, I think this is still a great map banning phase coming out here for YFP. For them to get rid of Pearl, as I mentioned before, very, very difficult for them to get a footing with this harbor that they're trying to pull out. But when you're seeing here this Tejo breach going through, you're just playing even footing for both of the teams on all of these maps. We haven't seen Fracture coming out from either of these two teams yet. But again, if you're going with that breach in Tejo, you kind of know what to expect from both of these teams, which they most likely would pull out at that point. And then you have Split at the decider that Stellar has always been really good at calling on that map. So I think if it's going to have to come down to that third map, it's Stellar's map veto that won it here for the team.
And I think that you look towards, like, circling back to our first pick here on Lotus, obviously the strongest pick for Blue Otter. They found the most success on there, though they have had some close calls on this map as well. All things considered, they haven't been blowout wins nonetheless. But maybe taking a little bit of a gamble towards, yes, it's a strong pick for them, but then also something that we haven't seen YFP play. And it's kind of a double-edged sword in that sense, because for YFP, you're not really sure what composition they'll be pulling out exactly on our first map in this best of 3. And for them, they also get that chance to kind of look back towards the footage that we have for Blue Otter, kind of check out how they've been playing, seeing if they want to look to counter some of their defaults, some of their set plays and whatnot. So it'll be an interesting juxtaposition between what can be expected out of Blue Otter and if YFP can take us by surprise.
And we should go over our expectations, aka our predictions, because I don't really know how I was gonna feel, because Blue Otter, their wins are only against Burger Boys and MORI. This is going to be the ultimate litmus test to see if Blue Otter can punch above their weight class, at least compared to their past history. And Vans, across the board, we're pretty YFP pilled, minus Keg, and maybe he'll elaborate on the cast. But how obvious of a choice is this? Do you think this is going to be a clean series?
It's definitely not an obvious choice. The only thing that probably stems and make it more difficult for Blue Otter for me is because of that roster change of bringing Zeldris in. Do they have enough time here with Zeldris coming in for that second week that they have a good game plan to play against YFP? Because just as Ash mentioned, we haven't heard or seen the composition coming out on Lotus, which again, I'm assuming it's still going to be a tailwind breach on that map on Fracture. So you kind of know that expectation, but knowing then the mid-game calling here that Stellar can bring out for this team of YFP could be very difficult for a team like Blue Otter that still has to figure out that synergy before going into that layer of, okay, we can now play our own game. We're confident in our game. How do we outplay now our opponents, knowing how they're calling currently? So hopefully that first question is answered right away, where Blue Otter could come out swinging right out of the gates and get some real success. If not, they'll have to be playing on the back foot the whole series.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be really curious to see if they're going to continue forward with that raise that Bob was previously playing for the side of Blue Otter, or if they will actually try and swap in that Yoru to shake things up with Zeldris in the server, with how good he's looked on that agent as well. So I'm curious to see, because you were talking about it previously about how it pairs really nicely with that breach, with that Tejo, with the space that they're able to create for that Yoru to get some really cool like TPs in and help make that space. So I have a lot of questions in that regard. I think it is going to be a really close series because Blue Otter, they have looked pretty good so far. But again, it is that litmus test that you're talking about there, Lemon. The fact that they are punching a bit above their waist class. I think no matter what, Blue Otter is the underdog when you look at the experience on the side of YFP. And for YFP, this is a chance for them to prove the dominance that was expected out of them from the beginning of the season.
And I know the initiators are flashy and all, but it seems like Blue Otter are also trying to maybe change things up in the Sentinel department. We're seeing a lot more Vice these days on Lotus, and Blue Otter are considering that, at least in their last 2 matches. What do you think about the Cypher versus Vice discussion, Ash, on the amount of delay that you can create and how flexible it is around a 3-site map?
I think it's a bit difficult. I feel like you have to have a really particular game plan with that Vice, and the Cypher has fallen a lot off quite a bit as well with the changes that have gone through with him several patches ago. There, Vans just not as strong as he used to be.
Yeah, I still think though head to head, if you're going with both of these agents, they'll have their pros and cons. I think Vice is still going to be very good, as you've seen how much she's able to delay on C site hits, because even if you're trying to get utility down towards the C site to break her util, she still has enough time to pop out the razor vines to stop even the first wave and second wave of hits coming through on that site. Secondly, though, the Cypher on Thief currently that we see her for YFP is still quite good, despite maybe tail utility that could break it at the very beginning. But the camera is still so good and important for a composition like YFP when you don't have any of that fade scan or the Sova scan. So that camera looking up on the A side, for example, to look for these hits or aggression out of the defensive side is still a very, very important on YFP side. And with them starting on the attack, I'm expecting a little bit of that, right? Getting a little bit of a default force that C site for orb control, for Penny, or for Physic, and then just making sure here that Jake and Thief are watching his B and A push.
What I really like as well about YFP is Penny being on that Yoru, expecting the Vice to come out from the side of Blue Otter. I feel like Yoru is such an important counter pick up against that Vice in particular, because you have that Yoru clone that's able to trigger that wall really early on if you're able to find what kind of space it's occupying, just so it doesn't allow that like later delay a bit later into those rounds, and opens up some of those opportunities early on for the attacking side.
Well, I'm excited for this, and even the post-Neon era of Penny showing off on the Yor. We haven't seen Lotus in quite a while from YFP. We'll see how they duke it out against Blue Otter, and to take you through all the action, let's go check in with Keg and Tenric.
Thanks so much, Jen. Blue Otter, after Bob's incredible performance in Game Changers, the spotlight on them has never really been hotter, and so what a perfect time to get them on the mainstream and hand them what many would call their greatest test since Rankers, a YFP that continues to find new ways to hit new peaks. Keg, this is a copy-paste of the comp we see from their Haven, and yet they still look terrifying. They still look like the perfect team to be the litmus to Blue Otter, which is why I need to thank you for preventing the predictions curse, and also why I need you to explain yourself.
Oh, okay. First of all, I understand. I'm the Benedict Arnold. I am the traitor of the vetoes here and the predictions. I get it, but let me explain. This first half is going to be the most important half of the entire series. YFP put most of their stock in their attacking side, Tenric. Watch Penny on this Yoru for the majority of the first half of this game. Most of the attacks deal with him creating that space and executing, at times, even fakes. A lot of decision-making around this Yoru utility. Same here with an early fake off pistol on C. It's something that YFP always does. And the thing, though, with Blue Otter is that they're very receptive to changes being made in the server. And that's going to be a big thing to consider as the rounds go on. It's going to be harder for YFP to adapt. Blue Otter has this advantage of being on the defense first. But keep in mind, too, even with the exec on B, there's plenty of footage against Blue Otter for YFP to use to counteract.
They appear to be pretty aware of this. They've been keen on the re-rotations up until this point, but YFP is still on site. A couple util up from Zeldris, and he'll take the opening swing, grab two along with him, and they'll open up the spawn off of that. Should be curtains from there. Indeed it is. Blue Otter, the Tsunami, takes over B site and the first round.
Oh, I also forgot to mention, too, my choice for Blue Otter, Zeldris.
Don't wreck this place all on your own.
And it's not like Welly was playing bad or anything, right? I feel like that could be a narrative that could be spawned in because Blue Otter were getting kills in their matchups, right? But they weren't getting a lot of firepower to get those kills. Bob is playing out of her mind, but with Bob and Zeldris on the same server, Bob goes back to her native role of initiators that she's been playing since the Sonic days. She's unstoppable. But now you have Zeldris on top too. This duality of pure aggression, even on the defensive side. It's how Blue Otter like to play their defense. They push up one lane, heavy stall on the other. Exact same defense that M80 brought out against the very unconfident YFP just a few weeks ago. And they lost out there too.
Getting ahead of that early attack has always been the way that these stronger teams continue to find ways to prevent upsets in the rounds that they know they should win. Here's one that Blue Otter has to retain that confidence in, so they'll keep the two stack on C site to prepare for a winded rotation. Shondex and Zoe still can hold their own. Rest of Blue Otter will rotate back over, and once again, YFP, the push just doesn't hold enough strength to it. and yet the team continues to. This is a stack that is still fresh off of getting Furia, their only win of the kickoff tournament, and a team that, I mean, came so close to being the only one that could beat Rankers as well. This, on paper, could be such a tough hill for Blue Otter to climb, and yet, really, the evidence that Blue Otter couldn't beat YFP also isn't there.
See, I wish we had a Challengers podcast for ourselves, right? Like, because there's so much to talk about.
Oh, you want us to yap longer?
Oh, dude, I am a top-tier yapologist. I could go on and on about these teams, man, but the TLDR is that Blue Otter and YFP don't really play that similarly on both a big scale and small scale level, right? The big core difference is how YFP interact with each other as a team. And for a while, that was their big negative. But now, suddenly, you boost on in as Zeldris, the double blast pack is out, and stuns galore everywhere. And suddenly now it's a war on both fronts.
Yeah, finally we'll get that conditioning going on the A courtyard takeover. And so YFP, they want to war on a couple fronts with this gun advantage, while Zeldris continues to hold down multiple on the rubble. Such a heavy weight already carried by this duelist that is still, like you said, so new to the team. And YFP, they've already been pretty whispered out of this C site. Zostal's just gonna keep pushing and grab Steve.
A lot of linearity when it comes to these initial pushes. YFP, they rely so much on Penny to get this extra space early into a round, regardless of the map, is that Yoru. Through the smoke, though, no one's watching from the side. Physic has the opportunity to do the funniest thing, but it only leads to one. It leaves it to Stellar with 29 HP and effectively nowhere to go. The only advantage they have is a single stun and a Vandal. But with so little HP and no info on Zoe and Shondex, it's going to be a tough going. Oh, 1v1, a blessing in disguise.
No sight from there. Zona checking. And Shondex still has to save face in case Stellar decides to fully press it, so they will wander slowly as Stellar gets the reset. And already 4 guns taken away in the meantime for Blue Otter. If Shondex can clear this out, a monumental beginning for what many consider to be Blue Otter's strongest map. Door hit on top of the Vise wall. Stellar will get the signal. This is a fully bred 1v1, baby. But a Razor Vine to prevent Stellar from being the one to swing, at least for a couple moments. Shondex, a little extra time to clear for himself. And now comes the full swing. Stellar is able to catch it and saves YFP's bonus round with the clutch.
Great decision-making from Stellar. I was scared at first when we didn't see the stun go through, but Stellar didn't want to reveal his position. He had no idea where the final player was, but had to make sure, okay, if this stun misses, I'm discovered, and I could very well lose this 1v1. Shondex, though, was in the right spot at the wrong time, I suppose. YFP finally have a round on the board. Again, the duality between Zeldris and Penny, huge for this series. Finally, full rifles on YFP's end. Once they find a site they're comfortable in achieving on, they continue to attack that site for the most of their attack. And A seems to be the way to go for this early rubble take.
We'll see an early double back here. Blue not reading this immediately, but that's why they've got Zostal so early, so they can read it before it becomes a real threat. YFP, a comp that is still very hell-bent on one-and-done pushes and then just pushing off of advantage with slightly less util. Zeldra's doing a good job of holding onto the shells as well.
That's true. Something to know, too, is that recently we've been seeing YFP rock Jake on the Astra instead of the Omen. This allows more fake executes on the attack. Omen this time, though, leads me to believe there should be slightly less, but probably still some once the ults ring true. Physic incredibly close to Armageddon. Penny, 2 off again from the dimensional drift for the C-take.
Flash in from Penny. You see this dynamicism from YFP of who can set up who, and it's Physic this time that takes the reins on the kill feed. Shondex able to play preventatively, but he's the only one that's still sitting on site for Blue Otter. YFP prepared for more dumping to ring through, but Pop doing some great ship along the way. And now the Aftershock continuing to apply pressure. The spike is still not planted, and the paint shells are going to catch Stellar as
20
well.
seconds.
Penny and he stuck on such low HP. YFP still yet to take over the second half of the site. This is such a dominant defense from Blue Otter so far, but Thief finds the early 1v1, and YFP spot the gap and the kills to take over. Zeldra's still standing, and like you said, 8 seconds to go. Spike will finally get down with those salvos to stall out, but Zeldris can reopen with that shot on the Outlaw. And you can bet all 3 of the other players are still left on 1 shot of those as well. Can pick up a gun as well. So many options available to this Raze to continue applying a pressure. But Physic on the loop
Timing.
around, catches Zeldris in the back of the head, but not with a bullet. Enough time for Zeldris to get at least one more. Paint shells now to stall out Penny, but Physic has made his way back around and saved the day yet again for YFP to tie us up at 2.
Now, I don't want my Blue Otter prediction to reign true or anything, but I think had we not seen that wraparound from Physic, I think Zeldris would have had that.
Yeah, very possible. Very doable for him. Especially with those paint shells back up. He timed that so beautifully.
And the showstopper that wasn't employed yet. Great chances of dividing out the 1v1s against YFP. And this is something, again, that we've seen a lot from YFP so far this stage of Challengers. Waiting till the very last second to get that spike into the ground. The timer has not been friendly to YFP a lot of these late rounds. But they love to take these early fights, and so do Blue Otter. Very early engagement out from C. This is the read. YFP engaging on early, but already an attempt to push up A rubble in the meantime to gather that space has been called. Shondex on a Nico. Only one Vandal available now for Blue Otter, Tenrek. They're rotating to A slowly but surely. Information will be a struggle for this defense. It really comes down to Bob getting that stealth drone perfectly down each time.
Great resolve from the rest of the team to hold on to so much of that kit, except Zostal, who continues to just sit in front of that C door and just kill anyone who walks into it. Penny opening up the A site, though, and Dry. They will take over, too. YFP not having to spend too much on this early, but that'll lead to Salvo to take down some health for Stellar. YFP continues to army crawl onto this site, tattered and torn, but they will continue to kill. Penny with 3 now this round. Let's see if you can grab 4 with Zostal finally on the run back. Jake certainly can't with such little HP, but the Salvo already pressuring him out just a teensy bit. Rest of the team for the crunch, and this should be easy enough indeed. Physic, another shot from the back to give YFP the lead.
Really like the fakes that we're seeing from YFP. Now they, like you mentioned, they have the lead. It's a matter of how they're going to be using Penny's dimensional drift. There's 4 ults available for YFP. If I'm Blue Otter right now, look, I'm a round down. I'm not in the best spot in the world. If I can make YFP magically use all 4 ultimates this round, I consider that a dub in my book, regardless if I win or lose. But this early lead through from Penny's ult should be enough to gather info on this early fight towards A. Armageddon on top, maybe a Rolling Thunder, perhaps then a big dominant fight for YFP would be a great start for them to double the rounds.
Zeldris going to invest the showstopper into this, going to try and get at least something out of it, and they do find Stellar's Rolling Thunder. The read from the showstopper doesn't fully deal the damage, though, and so Zeldris just still has to stand in front of this. He's only good for 1, and YFP should be able to rip the rest of this site open from there. Indeed, Shondex, only one standing, not for long. That's 3 more for Penny this round to give YFP now double the rounds of blue.
And Blue Otter have faced this problem before. They themselves have actually had this problem way back on smaller maps like Split, utilizing their Yoru to the maximum benefit of gathering that space. And the common thing that we would see from teams go for a timeout, I'm going to use Shopify Black as an example, is that when you're defending against YFP and Penny is just taking all, is literally hungry hippos gobbling up all the space he could possibly get, what would happen is Blue Otter, or really any defensive team, they'll start marking out where they first start seeing Penny at the beginning of a round. And they will purposely play to hide and wait for him to overheat, then take him out, and then execute their protocols for the defense. This stopped YFP in their tracks completely when they faced against Shopify Black and forced them to redo their entire strat book from the ground up.
Yeah, you've got to continue to heat check this Yoru. He's going to continue to be the one to just pierce open these defenses and find that weak point. That's why they brought this comp over from Haven. You're able to very quickly rotate such a gigantic util, dump of util, like taking a whole RV over to C site within seconds. And you just have to be prepared to fight with less if you're Blue Otter for these next 6 rounds.
Road trip.
Yeah, we're going from coast to coast here as YFP has. Oh, hey, wait, I cooked there. Holy, okay, Physic has the Armageddon still here as well. And so Blue Otter, they are still tempted to play early to try to flush that out. Zostal, I mean, tail of the tape for him. He's continuing to do the same thing he's been doing, which is intimidate.
Yeah, really good bait with the judge here outside the small corner of C site. Something we see a lot with Blue Otter on their ecos, that they like to hide in corners and death ball together. You know, nothing too unusual. Do want to say, though, Lotus is such a big map. It does feel like rotating from C to A is coast to coast. YFP, that's what they're masterful at, is taking that extra space and ending up with a fake. They're not afraid to sell ultimates to make a team over-rotate and hit an easier site.
They're not afraid to do the normal C, execute again. Penny off a flash, can't grab a kill, and now will leave Stellar B. Blue Water should be aware of this, but with the gun advantage, he should be able to handle himself. And so YFP, get a little creative with it. Let's send Jake to the back, and unfortunately, right into the face of Shandex, who was able to grab a free gun for Blue Otter now. Zostal will make haste with an ult of his own to head over to A site, so YFP will take heed. Rotate on over into a whirlwind of utility, but Zeldris gets all the kills with the Sheriff. Finally, the Armageddon is out, but too little too late. Stellar has to make up for lost ground, and Zostal still sitting with this judge. Might finally have an opportunity to turn the tables back again, especially with Zeke with the available crunch. No, Physic not available, but Zoe the jump out! And now an abandoned spike that leaves Zoe with another abandoned swing off of the paranoia, but Stellar still hits the shots. What an effort made off of the save round, but what a save itself by YFP.
I saw the vision. Stellar was completely blinded how it still got that shot. That classic should have been a historic moment for VCL, but regardless, though, a great round for Blue Water to take guns away from YFP. There are, of course, reinvestments, plenty of ults used from both sides. We're starting to see the benefit of bringing out the Omen over the Astra that both teams have been starting to bring out more on other maps. The repositional value of going across the entire map has been so beneficial for YFP to help out this Yoru pick. Big fast push on A once again, stealth drone out towards C. Finally, we see a lock and hold. Big fortification on C side itself with the Vice utility. But the Tejo is good at proccing it out fairly early. And this looks like, for once, YFP are going for a straight shot to site.
Another Vine to slow them down.
No.
Shandex able to scatter this out.
I knew it.
Yeah, they'll be heading back over.
I thought I was cooking. I'm like, no, maybe this is the one time they go for something. Well, because that's what they would do very early on, right? Like when they faced against M80, that was the big issue with YFP. They would put so much utility in mid, regardless of the map.
Yeah.
Do nothing with it. And then they would just execute a site hoping for the best. But now YFP are taking their time to sell these rotations against their defenders. And, well, for the most part, it works. I'm looking at the setup now from Blue Water. They look pretty good to stop YFP in their tracks. This might force them to re-rotate away from A, off the Armageddon, back to C site.
So well connected.
30 seconds left.
And so stalwart is Blue Water this round. Zeldris has been so good at maintaining this A site without giving away pressure to any other site. But YFP, they still are able to take the long road and head over to C site. Meanwhile, like you said, Thief heading up those stairs. This round is so far from over in Blue Water. They know they have a lot of time to play with before the Cypher comes crawling. Jake first sight. Good stall. Continuing to do this gives more time to this Cypher to find another.
YFP are willing to give side space.
They're fully on. YFP continuing to try to box out, but Blue Water, they've gotten the work done. It seems like Thief was just a little too late. Still catch one from Waterfall, but the damage may be done. That's one more, but too much on site. And Thief will clear it out. Hey, just in time, buddy. YFP still up 2 and still up on the eco by an extremely wide margin thanks to that utter trashing from the back, but still around for Blue Water.
I thought for sure that we would see YFP disengage offsite nearly completely and play for mountain control, just buying time to allow Thief to rotate and get that flank. Regardless, Thief did a great job, like you said, with the thrashing, but it did come just a little too late, and the positioning Thief was at Waterfall wasn't able for him to aim directly at the diffuser of the spike, regardless of the smoke. Luckily though, YFP, they were forced to run out the timer. Maybe able to work the map a little bit more this time. Blue Otter finding their comfortability on the defense. Zeke rolling Thunder available. Zeldris one off of the showstopper for the retake. They try to fish for an opening pick here just to have it. Oh,
That's
Penny.
a great pick off of the ult by Penny. And YFP should be able to snowball from there. Blue Water, tough to play for anything but the post plan, and they knew that, but even still, Penny can overextend so freely with that TP available that, and also thanks to that stun from, I believe it was Stellar. Very well placed. So, YFP, so much time, so much util to play with here. Blue Water, they will have to open up piece by piece, and most of it has to be done with Zeke's util. Rolling Thunder still available. Doubt they'll use it this round, though. We'll see if they can just Find some buried treasure among this seaside. Jake early hold, does pop Bob's head. That's a really rough push that'll force a reset, but still Bob finds one across the down site. 2v4 here with minimal time. We'll see if we can find one or two more along the way. Jake will finally get punished, but expected to. Penny, that was more than decent, as YFP will escape with the 6th round.
Yeah, Penny is finding so much value on this map as Yoru, and I think it was Vance saying on the desk how his transition away from being a Jet player, or pretty much just a Jet one-trick, through, it feels like since the dinosaur ages of Valorant to now, has worked out for him really well. He's still able to find that distance making that made Jet so valuable in the early days of this game. And sure, you're not able to op as much anymore, but we're in such a fast-paced meta that it's hard to find value on opping for any agent. So this transition has worked out unbelievably, and as I say that, Penny does rock the Outlaw, so the opping does come back a little bit. But for Blue Otter, the win condition's clear. You have to get rid of Penny before that spike goes down.
And they're going to get in front of this really early with Zeldris at the helm with the hero rifle. Good for one, but Stellar can just spray it back down. And now YFP, they'll be happy to take this fight, especially if Thief yet again has another sight from behind. Inconvenient fight at the forefront, but it's the risk that Blue Otter had to take with a round like that. YFP now up by 4.
And this is one thing that YFP, they struggled with early on, but they've made huge corrections with very much recently. YFP, on their entries, they wouldn't check their corners. They wouldn't clear things out as effectively. They were so focused on getting their positions right and the objective on site. Now they clear stuff out. They're re-clearing effectively. Blue Otter, they still struggle with this one aspect of their macro game. And YFP absolutely took advantage of, once again, big fight outside A.
Very brazen by Penny to just trying to get on those salvos and find the kill regardless. Will lead to an early kill by Blue Otter. And I suppose the punishment for that overheating was handed to them a little bit that round, but they will take it and run with it with this still slight gun disadvantage. Now it's Zeldris, the only one without the rifle, but the man's got a showstopper, so I'm sure he'll be just fine, especially if he is given enough space.
Timing!
He spotted that gun! He spotted that gun! Give it a blind to re-swing and escape. But Blue Otter still upheld on the sightline. Stellar finds the crack in the window. And now we are 4v3 now. We are back at a place where YFP can find advantage. They have to reopen Rubble. They have to reopen every sight line they cross through. So Blue Otter should be pretty certain that this is going to be a dedicated A push or just a swing through Baby Door. Either way, they've got those sight lines covered. Jake on the wide peak, given the smoke, off the stun nade, so Zostol's fully boxed out. They'll head into the A site simply with the Omen util. Jake taking on Atlas's weight on his shoulders, but we'll get the plant going. Early showstopper from Zeldris, and even earlier runaway from Jake, right into the arms of Zeke, coming down from the steps. A rolling thunder all too late into 4 members of Blue Otter, and he's only good for 1. Finally back on the board. Finally a close game again. Blue Otter wins on the defense.
One thing that's guaranteed between these two is that each round is absolutely chaotic. It is a war fight any which way we look. And with Bob going down so early into that round, it was tough for Blue Otter to re-clear just about anything. They had to dial back and wait for these aggressive peaks out of YFP in order to get a body advantage. And by the end of the round, they had to go for the re-clear with almost all of their ults. Bob has Armageddon available. YFP, they themselves, Thief, Neural Theft could be used off this early fight. An early Armageddon brought out in A lobby with a full push will give a lot of information that YFP aren't proccing A just yet. This is space that Blue Otter needs to hold on to so they don't have to re-clear it later.
A fantastic smoke by Zoe to save YFP from gunning it early on C once they read that Armageddon. Now, YFP can not only not confidently duck back into even spawn because of that lobby potential presence, yeah, they have to either crunch B or just fully send it onto what they might see as all of the Vice util. Shondex is still sitting here. He can place it for all we know. Sitting in front of the boxes, big flash to reopen the swing, and these smokes continue to peter out YFP's efforts on the final round of the half. They sit stalled, but with still 55 seconds on the clock. Do they choose to re-challenge the lobby? It looks like they will. Thief just gunning it back to try and take this space. And so Zostol reactively goes for the swing. Full whiff! Zeldris has to hold on to everything now if YFP decide to commit to this. But now, that's the hard part. YFP can commit to anything.
Oh no, it leaves Shondex on an island, has to get this kill, go for the steel guard, and another whiff! It's Penny again to unlock the site. Off-site though, Bob up top available. No ult anywhere to be seen for Blue Otter in this last round of the half. Separated out. The potential lurk off of Physic. One orb needed in order to get their Armageddon off to re-clear the backside for the defense.
Good aftershock to flush out. Bob is in front of it. They are to this early. They need to fight this forever and ever. Clearing out every angle, including that high-low. You have to commit 2 to that, and you just can't. With the resources Blue Otter has left, YFP, a cavalcade to bring them to 8 as the half concludes. What you perceive to be their strongest one, though, Max.
I do. I think both these teams have fairly weak defenses. Blue Otter, they have a defense capable of beating out YFP if this was still the early stages of Challengers. M80 does the same thing. Push, push, push. Fight, fight, fight. Early YFP did not like that playstyle at all. They feel a lot more comfortable going for these early fights now, but having Penny succeed so much in creating space on that attack is what wins YFP so many attacking rounds. But Tenrek, the defense is a different story. This one is much more of a 50-50, regardless of who YFP is facing. It comes down to a lot of gunfights. It comes down to who gets these early advantages. A lot of stun and flashes outside B this beginning round for YFP. They cannot falter. Penny only has 1 flash and Stellar the same. They have to go for this early swing.
The really tough part about this Yoru pick, and moreover Penny's affinity for it, is that it's not just the courtyard fight you have to worry about. You have to worry about YFP getting proactive on any of these site openings. So they'll start playing a lot of these early rounds very slowly to make sure that Penny doesn't get too big for his britches with the lead YFP still holds on to. Especially since if they lose just 1, especially this early, it could snowball so much quicker. Baby door able to easily get broken open. It will require Bob flushing out quite a bit, but she'll choose to let this drone go on the stairs and into the site itself. It will be able to catch and suppress Jake, but that'll just be their excuse to fully bust this down and go for the slightly less pressured site. The window of time is minimal, though. It's just enough for Physic to get missed, and the smoke will shroud his shots and soon his life. 4v5 on the retake here.
YFP, defensive pistol, great at collapses. Zelda should have the angle on 1, does not. A good stun, though. A great way to lead things forwards. A great fault line. Jakey, seemingly alone now, has a smoke down to separate the attackers in the post plant, locking them to sight. Of course, 1v1. Zelda hides in the fountain. A guppy, a fish born for destruction. Blue Otter, once again, they show a breath of life for their defense, for their attack.
Truly no proper punish game once Physic was taken out that early, especially when you were able to just run away from Link in the 2v3 so easily like Blue Otter did from there. I'm surprised there was not a trade despite such a tiny window, but it hands Blue Otter a gigantic advantage walking into this second round of the half already. The perfect springboard to get them to where they want to be this game.
Blue Otter's attack, though, far less linear from the times I've watched back on footage of YFP. YFP, again, they like to find one site that they're great at proccing and just keep going towards it over and over. That was C site on the attack. Blue Otter can be a lot more slippery, pun intended, when it comes to their early to mid-round plays. Stealth drone is out. May lead to this execute on C side. Very little defense being brought out. Even the analyst desk was debating between Cypher and Vice. A Tejo available for both sides will make the Cypher util exist far less in the server. And that's a lot of space for Blue Otter.
Yeah, Bob is going to feel a lot more confident in using this drone on smaller spaces, but checking more frequently. So Blue Otter can kind of contain less space and fight for it a lot better than YFP has to kind of expand off of it. And CC site, for an example, Penny continues to be the one to just absolutely frag out and open this up for YFP when it looks like the chips are completely down. And for that matter, they will get rid of 3 guns in this round as Blue Otter will take it away.
Yeah, great great eco for YFP and not so great anti-eco for Blue Otter. You're right, the guns have been lost and that could hurt Blue Otter quite a bit this next round. They may have to slow things down quite a bit and wait for YFP to get antsy to go for these opening engagements just to recover some economy. YFP have a lot of advantages going into this round. Penny, maybe, could bring out that dimensional drift, but fighting for orb defense here is going to be incredibly tough. You have to take this early fight rubble to do that.
Also checking that potential game point. Nightblood's got on M80 over on the B stream. Got the
Yeah,
extra
they
RAM,
downers
extra
for that
monitor.
one too, man.
Look, you're here for a reason. All right, you are valid.
Oh, thank you, Tedrick. I feel so bad. I mean, that's what Challengers this stage is. It's who can have the better micro fights when it comes to big group engagements.
Yeah.
And we're about to see that on C.
Yeah, we're about to see a skirmish indeed. Thief's util continues to be such a strange presence on this site, but one that trips Blue Otter up in the strangest manner. They are on site, but they are unsure of where to go from here, where normally their improvisational skills are second to none in Challengers this season so far. Still, their gun disadvantage continues to make that a tough plot. Thief will play nice and patient, funnily enough, though. And so YFP, they have a lot of space to make up, actually, on this retake with not too much time remaining. Still, Blue Otter, YFP is aware they have to be a little more in front of this, surely. So Thief confidently takes space inside that smoke before swinging out on top of the stuns. 2 for 1, 3 for 1. Jake's in front early, which means YFP is on site soon after. Salvo to stall, so Bobsta can continue to ring out, and there's one. Now the mound control you were looking for, but not the kills that she was. YFP will take the bonus round with 2 standing.
Quite a few guns taken away from YFP as well. Bob had re-cleared the back lanes, making sure no flanks were available for Blue or against Blue Otter, but YFP themselves still took C-site control with ease. There just wasn't a lot of utility for Blue Otter in the post plan to use to stifle them back. 6-9 now, nice. We see Zeke with Rolling Thunder available for an engagement, which could be huge. Oh, I like this replay. Great reposition value off of Zostal, taking that brown box space. Did allow a mini high-low for anyone playing around the small elbow of C-site. But once again, YFP have not changed their Sentinel utility. It's still on C-site. This conditioning of proccing out that utility, getting rid of it, and possibly resetting for the mid-round Tenra could be huge here.
Yeah, Thief has been the first one to go for that wraparound more often than not. Rolling Thunder on the execute, so Thief is going to be even more motivated to play keep away. Now, with those trap wires out of his reach, though, so Blue Otter will do a good job of being able to clear. Of course, until Penny walks into the picture with that Yoru ultimate and starts spraying through the smoke to apply that extra pressure. Even still, Blue Otter take the C-site with the same confidence they did the previous 2 rounds, and they will continue to box out YFP with the same amount of space. YFP still has the same amount of util to reopen, save for Physics' entire kit. Stellar now gonna unload his to get onto the site itself. It's gonna do good enough, and Thief will just start. Okay, bro, sure. We'll get on the spike and get this started. YFP should be good for half. No, Bob fires through on top of the salvo to prevent. Still 4 standing, still a good amount of time. Still a whole lot of Blue Water on this mound, but not too many shots connecting in time. Continuing to force to dance, and Blue Water continuing to get zoned out. Armageddon on top of the spike to play for time, though, and Bobsta still has to make up so much ground. Jake playing with her so well, but time is just enough for YFP. What a stupid amount of coordination necessary from YFP to get that done, but they still somehow do. On top of a salvo, on top of an Armageddon, on top of 5 outside. You couldn't ask for anything better from that defense, Keg.
And with 0.14 seconds left on the timer, the spike not halved at the very last second, a desperate defuse that comes by. Unbelievable from YFP. Their retakes on C have been phenomenal, and they're so great. No matter what kind of space and safety net Blue Otter think they have, YFP have been simply winning these gunfights more out of C. And it's time for Blue Otter to start thinking about going a different site. We've been seeing a lot of dancing around C for the longest time, but A site has barely been procced. Smoke comes down B main. Finally, now Blue Water is starting to pressure somewhere else. Spike towards A on Rubble. Jake yet to be discovered. It's a broken buy, though. Bob's the only one with a Vandal. And even then, you better hope you can hold on to it. Bob's the only one with a weapon that can fight Physics. Not anymore.
What an aggressive TP from Jake, but the confidence was clearly there from the very beginning. No hesitation required this round. Jake knows he's him. 11-6 now for YFP. And there was your A take, but debatably at the wrong time.
I mean, it's even hard to call it an A take when Blue Otter didn't get close to A site. They got stuck to
where
Rubble.
was the take, actually?
It was an avalanche. But here's a small nugget to put in everyone's minds, right? This is the only map in the entire series that Blue Otter has consistent footage on against them. So YFP definitely did their homework to VOD review them. But when it comes to split, a fracture and possibly split, the same can't really be said. Oh, Bob? Oh, does not fall for the decoy, but Penny's still there for that first engagement. He has just been an unstoppable force this game.
Really seems like the options are running thin for Blue Otter at this stage. They have to foot to the floor over to A site with such a fragmented squad. No smokes available, and your only ways out are these makeshift blinds, which is why Shondex is just getting so ridiculously proactive. In the meantime, he'll be the one to hold tree against 2 with this Steel Garden active. He'll place that pressure on and force Jake and Physic to wait for another door swing. Penny now also forced to wait from the drop. Good management so far from the remaining 2, who now have those guns, but the 2 swing is too easy on Shondex. And Zeldris yet again, the weight of the world on his shoulders. He can almost find 2 at the very least, but YFP, another quick shutdown, and now 6 rounds of room here on Lotus.
So many great defensive plays coming out from YFP. They are eagerly waiting for Blue Otter to take these over-aggressive fights in the post plant. If the post plant even happens. It's YFP consistently at every beat of a round winning these gunfights. And again, you'll never believe who's the front runner of taking these first bloods. It's Penny. But it's not just the Penny show. There's a whole dollar available for YFP. Stellar and Thief have been neck and neck with Penny to take these engagements too. This is a stack ready to fight teams like Rankers who prioritize gunfights. And will very well be the final round now. YFP looking to deathball out of B main just to bring us to the next map. Blue Otter decided to go C instead. Oh no, it's destruction.
The aura walk through the hallway. Stellar opens up on the frag, but there's so much more to offer here. Zostal does actually crack through C-side, and so now it's a crunch the other way. Blue Otter have all the pressure in the world and have now taken down the linchpins of YFP's retake game. They just need to get on site, and it's curtains for this 7th round for themselves. So they will. Still a 3v2, and so Dry Swings can do so much. Who has been the best at them so far? Thief is right behind you again. Now he's right in front of you, and the tables have turned one more time for YFP's favor. It may be the last. Zeke spots a shoulder, spots 1 kill in the feed. Now the 1v1. One to start many. Blue Water has their work cut out for them, even if Zeke does it here. But Thief has the space, has the spike, has the confidence. Not the shot, though. Zeke, great off angle to hold on to the round and the game just a little bit longer.
You mentioned it before, but YFP's improvisation in post plants has been fantastic. Be able to dry swing like Thief, shoot directly through smokes and magically land kills. This is something that Thief has been able to do at least once per series so far in Challengers. And it just gets these magical plays that no one can expect. Blue Otter are 5 rounds behind. They don't have great weaponry. Armageddon is available here for YFP. They may be able to do this, but again, if Blue Otter even win this round but lose a lot of bodies, they may be looking at another broken buy.
Driving in that fragility, and Thief has done a whole lot of work early on. Blue Otter could choose to take this on early, and now YFP, they see that as the signal to take over Rubble with that Armageddon. Zeke has been fully zoned away, but Blue Otter, they've done the clearing they need to on C-site, and so the real fight will once again take place here. Smokes are a little too late, and so is the defensive team this time around for what is another 3v4 against this attack. Has the distraction finally been good enough for Blue Otter to make this round look clean? They've got to hold on to so many guns in order to hold on to this game too. And Shondex is already so bloody low. Penny opens himself up this time. Nothing doing on that. Shondex spots the skull. And now it's Jake and Physic who are beyond boxed away. So much at the hands of Blue Otter. This round is nigh impossible. It'll go to 8-12. It'll go a little farther.
Blue Otter aren't giving up C-site anymore in the post plan. Physic won't be able to gain that free space anymore and fight for Mound. Blue Otter realized that they have to be forward-facing through the entirety of a round and can't give up that space. Still re-clearing for the lurks, though, and the flanks against Blue Otter in the post plan hasn't existed yet. Especially with Penny being gone, not gonna happen. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if YFP start toying with the fact that maybe a timeout could be necessary. Both these teams have been really receptive post-timeouts to change up their strats completely, just to see what the enemy team will do. Maybe a good time for a reset strategically.
There is definitely, a little bit of record scratching going on here for YFP, and they need to nip it in the bud. This is the right time to do it. So I mean, the proactivity on A side has been kind of lacking from both sides this half, and I think it does definitely have something to do with the comps of how like Penny's flexibility allows YFP to kind of just infect wherever they want to. So Blue Otter doesn't want to give away too much space on any other site early on. But at the same time, I feel like their A takes could still be so strong with how well Zeldris has been opening this up dry, with how well Zeke has been able to enable from such a distance as well. You could go for so many more off angles here if you're Blue Otter going forward.
Yeah, you could definitely take more off angles, but I feel with the comp of having Raze instead of a Yoru, you do have to put your strategic heart on your sleeves a lot more as Blue Otter. You're not necessarily able to sell fakes or deep lurks as well as you could with YFP's side, and so this does give a disadvantage to the Blue Otter that they have to make presence on the site they want to execute fairly early on. They can rotate, but they're giving up a lot of map space where YFP's attack wouldn't have that same issue. For Blue Otter, it's just them being at the wrong place at the wrong time in these fights and being caught off guard. Thief has been magical in smoke gunfights, and I've already talked enough about Penny. Just a matter of now seeing how A can work out, I agree.
Well, that's where they'll try early on. Baby door's immediately broken by the salvo. That's a thing about this util that I think is just ridiculous. That Physic is
Break the
demonstrating.
babies.
Armageddon really early here to make sure that nobody's hiding in the lobby corridor, so Blue Otter can potentially favor the B swing back if they choose to. They're leaning pretty heavy on this tree door, though, and YFP, it seems like they have a pretty wide read to that. Penny has a shotgun, and he's just killed you with it. That's
And now
rough.
he's got dimensional drift. He could have still kept the Bucky with it, but now he's got a Vandal to use to boot. One of two Vandals available, though, so or war rifles, I should say. Don't want to ult just yet, possibly for the post plant. Mini heart attack.
We're having fun with it here, aren't we? All right, there's the Penny ult. We're just going to go for it here. We're stalking Zeldris first. Zeldris will go ahead and nip that early. Nice shot to get rid of that sooner than later. And still Zeldris is good for one more. And Blue Otter, all of a sudden, they had a narrow window to escape over to A site. But Stellar has a narrower position on the one-way to retake that control, as well as the entire round and the game with it. Very quickly silenced is that incredible rally in the final round of Lotus, which YFP have indeed taken away.
YFP have improved so much since the beginning of this scene of Challengers. They are looking fantastic, big scale, small scale, and every scale in between. And on a map that should be Blue Otter's best so far statistically, there was so much for YFP to look over going into this matchup that they knew exactly how Blue Otter wanted to operate from round number one.
Yeah, their decision-making was second to none, reactionary to Blue Otter. They were able to make reads almost as quickly as Blue Otter's defense was, and it certainly showed when they started getting confident as well, which is what you love to see from the players on this team. So much potential on paper and in practice by this point, and we continue to see it in one of the biggest developing orgs in VCL North America. We'll see what the desk has to say about that map one and where we go from there after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
we all really get along like outside of the game as well. Like I think there's no like a lot of teams have like problems with chemistry long term and stuff, and some people don't mesh personality wise, and that can affect your inside of game. But we don't have that issue at all. Like, I think we all really like each other, and if we were to like qualify for Ascension, like there's probably no one else that we'd rather do it with. I always thought Penny was like a really, really talented player for a long time. I'm super thankful that he ended up wanting to team with me and the rest of the people on YFP at the beginning. But I think he's just like he's like a really, really solid teammate. Like there's a lot of duelists who maybe just can focus on themselves and stuff like that. But he has a very team-oriented like mind for how he wants to play the game as a duelist. So that's something I really appreciate about him. He's just incredibly well-rounded, and yeah, I think that's like a big factor on like why things have worked with him for a long time. We really put a focus on having good fundamentals. I think before we maybe played a little bit individualistic, but we had a team talk and just realized the best way for us to take down these other challengers teams is to just do the basics the best.